The legendary game called Magical Explorer is a tactical simulator where players alternate between school life and dungeon exploration. They create characters, customize weapons, aim to become the best alchemists in town, and enjoy great freedom within the game, which is known for its extensive content. A man works on his computer, focused on completing routes and leveling up in a game. He also plans to update a spreadsheet with his data. For him, playing J on the monitor is always a pleasure. He looks at the mirror, surprised and shocked by something he sees in his reflection. It seems something inside him has changed, or he realized something unexpected about himself. He realizes that the reflection in the mirror is truly him, with the earrings that identify him as Takioito, someone from the MX group. To confirm, he pinches himself, realizing he is not dreaming. He observes the surrounding environment and thinks this world is that of Magical Explorer, similar to his old world. Meanwhile, he notices something unexpected outside the window, catching his attention. From the top of the house, he watches a normal scene from the Magical Explorer world. A woman with elf ears walks a dog, while an elf and two children smile nearby. The landscape and inhabitants look familiar to him. He gets excited, realizing he is really in the MX world. Enthusiastic, he celebrates the chance to meet the game's heroines, but soon has a sudden realization that surprises him. He remembers that MX is full of heroines and attractive female characters, including some who didn't even have routes in the game. With this, he realizes he's in an ROG and gets excited about the possibility of living something with them, feeling both thrilled and nervous about the idea. The protagonist falls into despair upon realizing he reincarnated as the best friend character in the game. He knows that, especially in ROGs, the difference in treatment between the protagonist and the friend is huge, like night and day. He thinks about how ROG protagonists are absurdly perfect. Their skills appear even in the most ordinary tasks. The heroines fall for them with just a bit of kindness, and the plot moves forward with one convenient situation after another, always favoring the protagonist. While the protagonist is always favored, the best friend character lives in bad luck. He's never popular, girls don't approach him, and any sign of interest in another male character could cause outrage among players. This logic pushes the best friend into even more suffering. He fully understands why the best friend character never has a chance with the girls in games. Some become involuntary cupids. Others are mocked or ignored by the heroines. He himself got upset seeing an annoying character steal the protagonist's girl, even complaining on forums and support pages. Desperate, he kneels on the floor, unable to believe he reincarnated exactly as the protagonist's best friend. And on top of that, in an eroge. Looking at Takioto, he admits the guy isn't bad, but recognizes he belongs to the type who steals all the attention. Kusuke Takioto is presented as the typical best friend character, the comic relief always by the protagonist's side. He knows everything about the heroines, shares that information, and ends up seeing all of them being won over by the protagonist in the end. Despite being handsome, Takioto acts like a complete idiot and pervert, making offensive comments about the girls' bodies. As a result, everyone despises him, and he often gets beaten because of his behavior. With a headache and worried, he decides to stop lamenting and start planning his new life. Upon finding the acceptance letter from the Magic Academy, he realizes the story is just beginning. The prologue starts with the MX entrance ceremony. He's surprised to realize he's living an unseen part of the MX world. Neither the anime nor expansions showed this part. Excited, he celebrates the chance to explore something new and admits that, despite everything, reincarnating here wasn't so bad. He has 2 weeks until the entrance ceremony and knows the school where Takioto studies well. He watches impress the Grand Tsukuyomi Magic Academy, an elite school where the protagonist and other characters study. Realizing he is now part of this world, he gets excited about the idea of using magic, something he always thought was amazing. He panics, realizing that, unlike the game where he just had to click a button, now he doesn't know how to actually use magic. Worried about the possibility of being expelled on the first day, he decides to search Takioto's room for clues, since he must have studied magic at some point. He rummages through the room and finds notebooks full of useless scribbles. Takioto clearly didn't pay attention in class, and his notes are terrible. Outraged, he wonders how someone so dumb got accepted to the academy. Continuing the search, he finds a more recent notebook of Takioto's, surprisingly well organized. This makes him wonder if the guy changed his attitude. Soon after, he picks up a book he believes is Takioto's diary, and something there immediately grabs his attention. Reading the diary, he discovers that Takioto went through an extremely hard life. He lost his parents, was cut off from his mother's family, and his only living relative, his paternal grandmother, ended up hospitalized with dementia. Shocked by the content, he realizes how heavy and dark Takioto's life was. He recalls a scene in the game where Takioto got sad hearing a heroine talk about family, and now understands that was real, not a bug. Surprised by Takeyoto's hidden past, he keeps exploring and finds a book called Magic for Monkeys. Without hesitation, he decides to start with it. Seems perfect. He begins studying the book seriously and learns that all living beings in the air have mana, and it's this mana that gives rise to magic. He also understands that the difference between ordinary people and mages is in the amount of mana they possess. With this, he finally grasps the basics of how magic works. He decides to try something simple and concentrates. Soon he feels a strange sensation, like tickling. It's the mana reacting. Opening his hand, he manages to generate light, proving he finally succeeded in using magic. Excited, he celebrates realizing he can really use magic. Even though it's just a light spell, the most basic, he's amazed to be able to activate and deactivate it freely. Everything is still unknown to him, but this new power is incredible and thrilling. He remembers that MX has various types of magic: offensive, defensive, healing, support, and even bizarre ones like meme and sexy magic. Even as the best friend character, he notices Takeyoto had a unique advantage, a mana reservoir much bigger than others. With effort, he believes he can leave the unlucky role and become someone with real potential. He recalls that MX focused on dungeons and that, with enough strength, he could face them using teleportation circles. He thinks that, knowing the game deeply, he even knows places never shown before. Excited, he realizes he's really inside the game world. Not just the dungeons, but everything. He understands that his greatest weapon is his knowledge of the game. After beating MX several times, he knows exactly where to find every overpowered item, every strong skill, and all the potential needed to become the most powerful. With vast knowledge of the game and Takeyoto's huge mana reserve on his side, he realizes the size of his advantage. Determined, he decides he can try and will fight to become the strongest of all. Despite his desire to become the strongest, he recognizes the path will be dangerous. The most popular heroines were created to be absurdly powerful, and the protagonist, Iori Hijiri, is so strong he can even defeat the Demon King alone. The developer's favorite characters are completely unbalanced, making the journey even harder. Determined and full of energy, he declares his goal. He will become the strongest of all. Whether in dungeons, floating castles, or the World Tree, he promises to explore everything and follow his own path without limits. Excited with the 2 weeks before the entrance ceremony, he remembers a worrying detail: the school tuition. Considering Takeyoto's diary, he realizes he probably doesn't have enough money. Before he can think of a solution, someone rings the doorbell, and when he opens the door, he's shocked by who he sees. Opening the door, he's in shock to see none other than Marino Hanamura, the director of Tsukuyomi Magic Academy, standing right in front of him. She greets him calmly, while he can hardly believe a character from Mexico is here in person. Surprised, he tries to understand why the director of Tsukuyomi Magic Academy came to see him personally. Confirming his name as Kusuke Takeyoto, she invites him with a smile to go out to eat together, something totally unexpected. He's completely surprised to realize he's facing Marino Hanamura, an influential figure in the magic world and director of Tsukuyomi Magic Academy. In the game, she only appeared occasionally to give advice to the protagonist, so meeting her so early and in person is something he never expected. Marino apologizes for showing up out of nowhere, recognizing that her sudden visit may have been a shock. But before she can introduce herself formally, he panics and enthusiastically says he already knows very well who she is, trying desperately to calm her and avoid any misunderstanding. The page shows a humorous critique about the absurd cliches found in eroge game plots. The narrator comments that many of these games force supernatural or extremely unlikely situations just to justify sensual scenes. One example cited involves an exchange between families, swapping a son and daughter between neighboring houses, which conveniently places the protagonist in a harem. The narration ends stating these games create a super reality, distorting logic for the convenience of the story. The protagonist gets excited to learn he will have dinner with Marino-san, an important character from the game. He acknowledges that normally he wouldn't accept an invitation from a stranger, but remembers he now lives in an eroge world. Since he knows Marino well through the game, he feels comfortable and confident. She greets him with a smile and invites him out, ending with a light and lively atmosphere of expectation. Marino apologizes for only managing to reserve the best available restaurant, which shocks the protagonist. After all, the place is extremely luxurious. He thinks rich people really are from another world. The dish served seems to cost the equivalent of a whole month's expenses, but he pretends to be used to it and thanks her excitedly, while Marino responds with a satisfied smile. Takeyoto tries the meat and is completely blown away by the flavor. He feels an explosion of taste. he never imagined experiencing in his life, highlighting the carefully prepared sauce and the meat's juices. He thinks an ordinary worker would never have access to something like this. Marino, finding it funny, smiles and says he really is a silly boy. After seeing how excited Takioto was, Marino decides to eat too. She eagerly allows herself, still impressed by the quality of the food. While she tastes the dish, Takioto gets distracted, enchanted by her appearance, especially her eyelashes and perfume, finding her extremely sexy. Marino tries the food and is delighted, praising the flavor enthusiastically. Takioto watches her reaction and thinks how hard it is to believe she has an adult son, considering her young and charming appearance. He describes her as a typical eroge character, a beautiful woman of undefined age, with obvious beauty and youth. Takioto is completely enchanted by Marino, feeling like he's in paradise for finally seeing up close a character he always admired in the game. He recalls that when he found out she didn't have her own route, he even sent many support forms and surveys to the developers, asking for more content about her, without success. Meanwhile, Marino notices his gaze and asks, confused, if there's something on his face. Takioto realizes how strange he had been acting, staring at Marino, and immediately apologizes, saying he couldn't help it because she is so famous in the magic world. Marino, confused, asks if everything is okay, while he, still shocked, reflects that now she is not just a character on a screen. Marino is a real person in front of him. The scene ends with a light touch of their hands, leaving Takioto completely surprised. Marino gently holds Takioto's hands and tells him not to be nervous, affirming that their relationship will become much closer from now on. Takioto, surprised and embarrassed, can only think about how incredibly soft her hands are. Marino looks seriously at Takioto, firmly holds his hands, and states directly, "I have taken you in as my son." Takioto goes into shock upon discovering that Marino is his relative on his mother's side. She says his mother and she were cousins, and, after learning about the tragedy he went through, decided to take him in as family. Even without warning him, she wanted to be by his side as soon as possible. With teary eyes, Marino apologizes, and Takioto, surprised by this unexpected new plot, thanks her with a smile, recognizing she is still as kind as she was in the game. Marino invites Takioto to live with her and her daughter, since the house is close to Tsukuyomi Magic Academy and has extra rooms. She says her daughter also accepted the arrangement and asks him not to be shy. Takioto is surprised by the proposal and recalls that, in the game, he lived in the dorm next to the protagonist, which makes this change a big difference from the original story. The protagonist mentions that Marino's daughter is famous on her own. Marino confirms, surprised, and reveals her daughter's name is Hatsumi Hanamura, an instructor at the academy. She is also an important character in the game, responsible for granting an essential skill to the original story's protagonist. The protagonist struggles with the proposal to live with Marino and her daughter, something that never happened in the original game. He considers this living route with mother and daughter a unique opportunity he needs to try. However, he realizes choosing this path could affect the main story's events, since in the original game Takioto lived in the dorm. This makes him hesitate, as changing the plot's course too much could be dangerous. The protagonist starts doubting his decision to live however he wants. He realizes this new timeline is unknown to him and wonders if it's right to deviate from the game's route so early. He knows about the story events and the triggers that activate them, so he wants to avoid doing something that changes everything drastically. Even having time before the main story begins, he fears that a choice made already in the prologue could affect the whole narrative's direction. The protagonist wakes up and finds Marino Hanamura and her daughter Hatsumi serving him a luxurious breakfast. Marino is lively and welcoming, while Hatsumi greets him with a simple, "Good morning." Even surprised by the whole situation, he wonders how he could refuse such an amazing offer. Marino notices his hesitation and apologizes, saying she didn't want to pressure him. The protagonist, confused, keeps thinking about what he should do now. Marino suggests that, while the school dorm application deadline is still open, the protagonist could test living with her and her daughter. He gets excited about the idea and accepts immediately. She then proposes exchanging numbers to arrange later, but he hesitates and says, "About that," indicating he might have a problem with a cell phone or something related. The protagonist confesses, embarrassed, that he doesn't have a cell phone. He explains he searched everywhere but couldn't find one. Marino reacts surprised and shocked, eyes wide in despair upon realizing the situation. Marino is shocked, thinking the reason Takioto doesn't have a cell phone is a deep trauma. She believes his parents were killed by demons right after one last call, which would explain why he never answers the phone in the game and his extreme hatred of demons. The protagonist, on the other hand, is completely lost with her dramatic conclusions. Takioto stumbles into the room, saying he drank all the water from the school well because he was thirsty, acting like a complete clown. The other students are shocked by his behavior, considering he had a tragic past. One thinks he's crazy. Another says he's a total airhead, while a girl tries to understand if he's okay. Takeyoto gets thoughtful, realizing how hard the life of the character he assumed is, feeling sorry for him. Meanwhile, Marino watches silently and thinks she would like to do something to improve his life, saying kindly there's nothing to worry about. Takeyoto explains he canceled his cell phone plan to save money, but now feels okay with it. He borrows her cell phone for a moment, and Marino is relieved and happy to see everything is fine. He in turn thinks how much he prefers to see her smiling. Marino decides to give Takeyoto a new cell phone as a gift to celebrate that they are now officially family. They go together to the store, and she chooses the latest model for him, leaving Takeyoto surprised and a bit insecure with such generosity. Marino says goodbye to Takeyoto after a fun day, saying she will need to travel for work. Before leaving, she gives him a large amount of money to cover his expenses for a week. But Takeyoto is shocked by so much money, saying it would be enough for a whole year. Marino, unfazed, already considers leaving the card with him, thinking the amount wouldn't be enough. Takeyoto says goodbye, surprised by the amount of money he received. Marino, worried, insists he can call her any time if he needs anything, no matter what. He reflects that Marino clearly lost touch with financial reality, but also realizes he is now connected to the powerful Hanamura family, which has great influence in magical, financial, and political sectors. Finally, he feels he now has the wind in his favor, even with some differences from what he remembered from the game. Takeyoto decides not to spend the money just on daily expenses. Instead, he wants to invest in something that makes him stronger, like weapons, armor, magical, or rare items. Based on his knowledge of the game and the data spreadsheet he created, he gets excited with the idea of seeing how far he can go on his own, since in this world, there are no guides or walkthroughs like in the original game. 2 weeks before the start of classes at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy, Takeyoto decides to strengthen himself as much as possible before then. He knows that when school starts, many different events will happen. For that reason, he plans to test his skills right away to be prepared and able to handle all the event flags that will appear. With money in hand and motivated, he takes the first step in his preparation. Takeyoto arrives at a convenience store called Save Inn, noticing how the country of Wakoku is similar to modern Japan, with the same currency, seasons, and even the same types of stores. The biggest difference in the MX world is the various races of people and the existence of magic. Excited, he finds his goal: magical instant noodles with tonkotsu shoyu flavor. Takeyoto stocks up on a large supply of instant noodles to focus 100% on magic training. Excited to have mastered the beginner light spell, he decides to test a new one, this time wanting something more thrilling. To him, when it comes to real magic, it can only be emission magic. Takeyoto gets excited about mastering offensive magic, the most flashy and coveted type of spell by every player. He knows the magical attacks used by heroines conquered the audience, and wants to learn too, even if he has to start with the simplest ones. Determined, he vows he will master this type of magic no matter what. Takeyoto decides to begin his magic training with the simplest spells, looking for something even he could use. Flipping through his materials, he finds beginner-level spells, like Water Gun and Fireball, and soon gets excited about starting there. Confident, he chooses the light magic and says to himself, "Too easy." Takeyoto prepares to use magic as he did before with light. He concentrates, gathers his mana, focuses his mind, and visualizes the magic. Pointing at a can, he fires with force, releasing the spell with great impact. Takeyoto is shocked to see the magic worked. Water really shoots from his finger. Excited, he celebrates the success of the water gun spell, finding it super useful. Soon he starts using it to water the garden, happy with the water savings and how practical the magic is. Takeyoto is frustrated because the water gun magic, which should be offensive, is so weak even using all his strength. He starts doubting his own affinity for water magic and wonders if other elemental magics like fire, wind, or earth would also be weak for him. Still, he gets excited about the possibility of mastering legendary magics, since he is in an Era J world, and maybe there is still something promising hidden. Takeyoto collapses on the ground, defeated and frustrated. He realizes none of the magics he can use serve for combat, and that even clearing a simple dungeon would be suicide. He remembers his bold goal of becoming the strongest and how distant that seems now. Amid all this, he feels relieved that the MX world isn't too dark, because in his current state, he would barely survive 10 minutes. It is revealed that Takeyoto, despite having a good mana reservoir, has no aptitude for offensive emission magic, a popular type of spell among players. This caused many to see him as a character useful only until mid-game. However, there was a specific way to use his powers that, if mastered by someone experienced in MX, could unlock his true potential. Even though it's a complicated case, there was a loophole for him to grow. Takeyoto remembers an essential item of his character, the long red stole. In the game, it was made of a special material that facilitated mana flow, being an important part of his character sheet in the limited edition. He concludes that, to take advantage of Takeyoto's strengths in the real world, he will need that stole. Takeyoto decides to look for the magical fabric needed to make his stole, since it would be hard to find a ready-made one in the ideal size. He starts searching for mana fabric, but soon despairs seeing the absurd prices. Even with all the money Marino-san gave him, it wouldn't be enough. Still, he finds a more affordable alternative made with spider silk, red and perfect for what he needs. Finally, something he can afford. Takeyoto buys 2 units of the magical fabric, impressed with the fast delivery. It would arrive in just 1 hour. While waiting, he decides to review the book Magic for Monkeys and discovers there are 2 ways to strengthen mana, one of them new even to him. Excited, he states that intensive training will start as soon as the fabric arrives. Takeyoto goes out for a run, wearing the fabric he bought, but quickly realizes the long and flashy piece is bothering him and drawing too much attention. People around react strangely, and even a child comments there's a weird guy nearby. Embarrassed and feeling out of place, he decides it's better to look for another place to train. Takeyoto finds a new, quieter place to train. He activates a physical strengthening spell on himself and, excited, sprints at high speed, determined to improve his physical abilities with magic. Takeyoto continues training by running with the magical reinforcement active. He reflects that his current goal is to raise his level and acquire skills. To do this, he needs to make the most of the huge mana reservoir he has, focusing on enhancement and enchantment magics. He remembers that, just like in the game, there are 2 ways to increase mana. The first is leveling up by collecting magical particles. Takeyoto remembers the second way to increase mana, using magic until it is completely exhausted. For this, he decides to keep enhancement and enchantment magics active while running. Then, he tests casting an enchantment on his own magical fabric and is impressed to see he can make it as hard as iron. Even after running and continuously using magic, Takeyoto notices that his mana still shows no signs of running out. He's impressed with his stamina and gets excited about the possibility that, upon leveling up, he could add other elements like water and fire to the enchantments. To try to force more mana consumption, he decides to use abilities involving the enchantment, wanting to push himself even further. Takeyoto activates the skills of his stole, third hand on the right side and fourth hand on the left. He confidently states that these are the keys to his close combat fighting style, showing enthusiasm for his new way of fighting. Takeyoto shows he is comfortable using the third hand and fourth hand skills, saying he has already gotten used to moving them. Meanwhile, the narrator notes that in the original game, these skills were not available by default, and that Takeyoto used excuses until he simply managed to activate them. Takeyoto continues his training, determined to master the new abilities as soon as possible. He hopes to achieve this even before moving into the Hanamura family house. After 5 hours of running non-stop and using enhancement magic, Takeyoto is surprised to realize he hasn't even come close to exhausting his mana. Even by making the training harder, his energy seemed endless, which leaves him confused and lost in a distant field. Takeyoto realizes that training without knowing his mana limit is totally inefficient. He concludes he needs a magical item to check his statistics, including even the hidden attributes. While eating and reading, he accepts that he will have to start from scratch to properly evolve. Takeyoto discovers that, besides general levels, there are hidden stats like constitution, magic, resistance, stealth, and more. Despite so many advances, he gets frustrated that magic is still a poorly documented field. Determined, he concludes he needs to talk to someone who really uses magic in practice, and he knows exactly who to look for. Takeyoto reveals that Marino-san is a specialist among specialists, famous for having defeated a rank S monster single-handedly. He admits he couldn't ask for a better magic teacher, although he also seems nervous about it. Takeyoto freaks out just thinking about asking Marino for lessons, calling her the Witch of Tsukuyomi. He finds the idea absurd and is sure she must be way too busy. In the end, he decides to keep training on his own, but ends up burning himself with magic shortly afterward. Takeyoto realizes that even after days of training, he is stagnating. He feels like he is just repeating movements, and that alone, he won't get much further. Frustrated, he thinks that without the strength to use the game knowledge, he is still far from becoming the strongest. To make things worse, he drops his expensive magical equipment, dirtying everything. Takeyoto finally meets Marino-san, who came running after sensing a large amount of mana nearby. She congratulates him for practicing magic, showing pride and enthusiasm, while he feels surprised and relieved by her arrival. Taking advantage of the moment and seeing Marino-san smiling and available, Takeyoto musters courage and kneels strongly on the ground, shouting desperately, "Please, stay with me." The scene completely surprises Marino, who goes into shock at his sudden intense declaration. Marino is shocked by Takeyoto's sudden declaration and panics for a moment, mistakenly thinking he is confessing romantically. But he quickly clarifies he only wanted her to help with magical training. Marino, relieved, accepts with a warm smile and says she would be happy to help, reminding him they are now family. Takeyoto thanks her excitedly, while she lightly scolds him for being so formal. Takeyoto explains to Marino that he is training to freely move his stole while running, without letting it touch the ground, and also keeps his enchantment magic active, even when not training. Marino is surprised to learn he can maintain the spell for 10 straight hours, and that this doesn't even drain his mana. He comments that his goal is to keep the enchantment for 24 hours, and Marino, impressed, reacts with admiration at his magical stamina. Marino praises Takeyoto's idea of keeping the stole constantly enchanted, saying this has many uses and can help increase mana quantity. Takeyoto is happy to know the book's information was correct. When Marino asks to touch the stole, he enthusiastically allows it. She observes closely, and as she approaches, her heart starts racing, showing she's getting nervous about the situation. When touching Takeyoto's enchanted stole, Marino receives an intense mana shock, surprised at how powerful the enchantment is. Even being an experienced mage, she admits that his magical power and enchantments may even surpass hers. Takeyoto, in turn, is shocked by the compliment, not believing he could be better than her. Still, he internally recognizes that if he wants to be the strongest, he will have to surpass people like Marino. Takeyoto has an extraordinary mana reserve, more than double that of the heroines who constantly cast powerful spells. This attribute is the most important to him, and every action he performs consumes mana. That's why his training often leaves him breathless. To improve control, he asks Marino to watch while he moves his enchanted stoles during the run, wanting to know if he's doing it right. Marino agrees and prepares to watch. Takeyoto begins his run, releasing the enchanted stoles with precision and speed. He moves them with force and control, making curves, attacks, and quick movements, while keeping the enchantment active. Marino watches with surprise and admiration, clearly impressed by his skill. Marino notes that Takeyoto has been running for quite some time, and suggests he try turning the stole into a shield. He reflects that, despite training intensely, he might be too rigid and not varying enough. At the same time, he realizes there are still many possibilities with his skills and feels excited about exploring new uses for magic. Takeyoto transforms his stole into a fan-shaped shield. Marino watches and comments that shields can have various shapes, asking if he visualized a specific structure when creating his. Takeyoto is surprised by the question, indicating he acted more on instinct than planning. Marino tests Takeyoto's shield with a strong attack and easily knocks it down. She explains that the fan shape doesn't withstand repeated impacts in the same spot and doesn't disperse force well. To improve, she guides Takeyoto to imagine a detailed shield with a shape that can deflect and soften impacts. He understands and starts focusing on that. Takeyoto successfully forms a new shield, this time with a curved shape ideal for deflecting impacts. Marino praises the result and says that shape will be useful in combat. He happily celebrates, thanking her for the help, and realizes that this type of shield is similar to those he always saw in games, made to disperse attack impact. Takeyoto confirms excitedly that the third hand and fourth hand abilities are not normal offensive skills. He explains they are versatile skills. When mastered, they can both split stones and become shields as strong as steel. Takeyoto says he will become even stronger, and Marino jokingly replies that he is a hardworking guy. She states that with his abilities, clearing even the lowest levels of the Academy's dungeon would be no problem. Despite this, Takeyoto gets nervous when she mentions he will be able to choose good team members once classes start. He doesn't know how to handle that and realizes he will have to prepare for it too. A carriage stops in front of a luxurious mansion. Inside the hall, a butler respectfully approaches a young woman named Princess Ludi, informing her that travel preparations are complete. He offers himself at her disposal, to which Ludi responds with a simple and elegant "thank you," demonstrating class and formality. Princess Ludi gets out of the bathtub and walks calmly through the hall, while a button is pressed to silence the surrounding sounds. Two maids approach to help her dress, wrapping her body with delicacy and professionalism. The scene transitions to the finishing touches, with Ludi being adorned with an elegant dress and jewelry, showing the care and respect dedicated to her position. Princess Ludivine, now dressed and ready, contemplates the horizon from the top of her balcony, saying that the time has finally come. She walks elegantly accompanied by her ladies and is received with respect by everyone in the castle. Her official presentation is highlighted. Second Princess of the Trèfle Empire, Ludovine Marie-Ange de la Trèfle. Upon noticing someone familiar, she gets excited and calls for Clarisse with a warm smile, revealing her kind and close side despite nobility. Ludovine holds the hands of her loyal companion and says she has nothing to fear with her around, placing full trust. The maid, Clarisse, responds with a smile, saying it will be a pleasure to protect her. Meanwhile, the imposing armor and shield are shown next to the princess's luggage, and an oath is made. No matter what happens, I swear I will protect her. Ludovine, confident and serene, just watches with a slight smile. Ludovine Marie-Ange de la Trèfle, nicknamed Ludi, is presented as one of the main heroines of the game, even featured on the cover, which shows her importance and favoritism among the developers. Usually a sign she is a powerful character. She is the second daughter of the Emperor of Trèfle, coming from elven lands. Ludovine was known for her coldness and verbal abuse, generating the so-called Ludi syndrome among players. She treated the protagonist, Takioto, like trash and was harsh with men in general. Still, her popularity among Eroge players was immense. The reason? Once someone gained her trust, she became extremely caring and devoted, creating a striking contrast with her initial personality. Takioto finishes organizing his things and prepares for the move, excited about the week before classes start. He says he sent everything he needed in advance and is ready for the new phase. Marino-san arrives to pick him up by car, and he expresses his excitement about living together, even if just for a trial period. During the trip, she suggests a detour, promising he will love it. Takioto is amazed upon arriving in the city, impressed by the quantity and quality of magical items and rare weapons for sale, like mithril, orichalcum, and high-he irokane. He had never seen all of it so up close before. Marino explains that the city houses both the Magic Academy and the airport, so it has a much larger variety than other places. She then asks if there is any weapon he would like to test, and he becomes thoughtful upon the question. The most popular option in the game was to turn Takioto into a real defensive wall, using 4 shields with the third hand and fourth hand abilities. However, despite the effectiveness as a tank, Takioto feels this isn't fun and wants to fight with everything he has. The problem is he doesn't have powerful weapons like other characters, which becomes a big disadvantage in offensive combat. As the game progresses to the middle, the heroines begin to stand out with unique weapons and powerful abilities. As a result, Takioto ends up being left out. He is expelled from the main group and relegated to exploratory tasks in the Magical Instruments Lab. With stronger characters taking his place, he is considered weak in comparison. Moreover, his annoying behavior also causes players to stop using him, showing how poorly he was regarded in the game. Takioto hasn't chosen a specific weapon yet, but believes that a close combat weapon would be the best option. Marino suggests he can focus on training both attack and defense until he masters his abilities. Then, she shows that she sewed the magical fabrics into the shape of a scarf and a stole perfectly fitted. Takioto is impressed and thankful. After that, they prepare to head to the Hanamura house, which is nearby. Marino warns that an unexpected event came up at work and asks Takioto to manage on his own for a while, promising to return later. She hands him a pamphlet for the Hanamura Hotel, which is her family's, assuring that they will accommodate him well and that they can meet there afterward. Takioto agrees and, upon seeing the hotel's name, is surprised, remembering his mother was also a Hanamura, although he knows little about her. Takioto arrives at the Hanamura Hotel and is impressed by the size of the building, finding everything grandiose. He recognizes that the Hanamura group is truly powerful. Upon entering the lobby, he is even more amazed by the place's luxury and decides to take the opportunity to study magic while waiting. While Takioto was studying in the hotel lobby, a strong explosion occurs in the building annex. Chaos erupts. People panic, and an employee starts evacuating those present. Takioto panics when he realizes he lost his cell phone amid the confusion and decides he also needs to get out of there as soon as possible. Takioto tries calling Marino, but his cell phone is completely damaged. While thinking about what to do, he notices 3 suspicious men in suits and begins to suspect they might be involved in the explosion. He discreetly watches them enter the elevator. Shortly after, Takioto hears a familiar voice shouting in the distance, which catches his attention. Takioto is surprised to recognize Ludi, one of the main heroines of the game, now standing before him. He never expected to find her there. Meanwhile, Ludi, with a serious and firm look, confronts a group of men with a direct accusation. "So you were going to betray me from the start?" Next to her, her armed maid and butler accompany her silently, ready to act. Takioto realizes he is in danger as the men in black appearing there are enemies on Ludi's route in the game. He tries to stay calm, but knows the situation is critical. Ludi, in turn, says she doesn't understand what they are thinking, but warns they won't get away with it, as she is accompanied by her trusted servants, Aurelian and Clarice. Takeyoto recognizes this moment as an important event in Ludi's route and notices something else. She is afraid of men. Actually, a general phobia of people. Something caused this fear in her. Takeyoto remembers Ludi's past in the game. She was betrayed by someone she trusted, and as her route progresses, this story is revealed. In the original development, she even lost her virginity, which generated much criticism from players. Because of this, the devs changed her past and justified her fear of people with this betrayal. Takeyoto understands he is in the exact place where this event happens in the game. He only had indirect information, but by the situation, he is now sure. The betrayal event is about to start there. The men begin to act violently, and Ludi's knight strikes one of them forcefully. When one of the bandits points a gun, the situation escalates quickly. The butler, Aurelian, takes action, raising his hand to cast defensive magic. Meanwhile, the maids protect Ludi, who is confused and surprised by the attack. The order is clear: protect Princess Ludi at all costs. Aurelian attacks Clarice with magic, violently throwing her to the ground. Ludi runs to her, shocked, unable to understand the betrayal. Clarice, injured and immobilized, hears the disappointed words of the princess. Ludi questions how someone who faithfully served the family for so many years could act this way. Ludi tries to understand the reason for the betrayal, believing Clarice must have some reason. But Aurelian despises her, calling her naive. He knocks her down and brutally pins her to the ground, pointing a gun at her head, ready to kill. Ludi is immobilized while Aurelian reveals his cruel intentions, saying it wouldn't be fun to just kill her. Surrounded, she falls into despair, unable to believe what is happening, crying for help while pressed to the ground by him and his accomplices. At the moment of greatest despair, Ludi is saved by a surprise attack that knocks down one of the captors. A hooded man appears using reinforcement magic, defeating the enemies swiftly. Aurelian recognizes the type of magic, but cannot identify the intruder. Ludi is protected while the attackers, shocked, shoot trying to stop the unknown man. Takeo appears hooded and calms Ludi, assuring he will not hurt her. He covers the injured Clarice and decides to intervene instead of Marino, who would normally save Ludi at this point in the story. Unable to contact her, Takeo declares he will do everything in his power to protect the heroine he loves. Ludi trembles after the shock of what she went through. Takeo notices she is not well and decides to protect her. When the enemies order the death of the three, he activates the skills Third Hand and Fourth Hand, creating spinning barriers to buy time. Takeo looks at Ludi, remembering how much she is his favorite character. He memorized her full name, her theme song, played all possible routes, and was moved by her ending several times. The protagonist realizes Ludi is in shock and can't help him at the moment. He protects himself with his enchanted cloak, but this prevents him from seeing the enemies moving. With the fire spreading and the enemies approaching, he understands it is only a matter of time before he is caught. To buy time, he activates his skills, Third Hand and Fourth Hand, preparing to execute his plan. The protagonist explains that Ludi is in danger and asks the injured girl for help. Even exhausted, she says she can use defensive magic while pretending to be unconscious. He then turns to Ludi and says he needs her to also do something, activate her mana, even if only for a short time. The protagonist asks Ludi to shout Aegis as a lure, but the real spell she must cast is Light, a simple light magic. He explains that just shouting is enough to fool the enemies. After that, they will have 10 seconds to act, and he promises to take care of the rest. Ludi activates her mana and begins the count. At the exact moment, she casts the light magic, surprising the enemies. The confusion allows the protagonist to shout "Now!" and move into action, taking advantage of the opponent's disorientation. Ludi shouts Aegis and activates the defense magic while the protagonist advances carrying her. The magical shield blocks enemy attacks, creating an opening. The men in black notice the escape and shout to focus on Trefle, ignoring the boy who is fleeing. The protagonist realizes the enemies are focused only on Ludi and decides to use this to his advantage. He moves quickly to attack them by surprise. Responding to the plan, Ludi shouts "Light!" and casts a light magic that blinds the enemies. With that, the protagonist sees his chance and rushes in the middle of the chaos. The protagonist takes advantage of the light magic effect and charges the enemies, hitting several with force. Even with the enemies trying to react, he activates enchantments and hardening on his arm to increase his power. With a final direct and powerful blow, he knocks down the enemy leader, ending the fight with a decisive attack. The protagonist takes down the entire enemy group at once, and the cloth he used as part of the plan slowly falls while he remains firm. Ludi cheers and he finishes by binding everyone with immobilization magic, completely ending the threat. The protagonist confirms the enemies are completely immobilized, ensuring the safety of the place. Ludi approaches, surprised he defeated them all alone, and thanks him emotionally for saving her. He feels shy hearing this and thinks about how cute she is. Marino runs to Kosuke relieved, saying she heard about the hotel attack and is happy he is okay. He apologized for worrying her, and she asks him not to act so recklessly again. Kosuke discovers that Ludi, the girl he saved, is the daughter of the Emperor of Trefle, and that she will study at the same school as him. Marino says Ludi and her maid want to formally introduce themselves. Kosuke pretends to be surprised but gets nervous, thinking they will ask him to take responsibility for what happened. Ludi and Claris formally thank Kosuke for saving them, but he gets all flustered trying to apologize for what happened. Ludi, smiling intimidatingly, teases by asking if what he did was unintentional. Then she hands him a thank you letter from the Emperor himself. Kosuke feels relieved, but also scared by Ludi's intense and cute manner. Claris reveals the recent attack was carried out by a cult called the Church of the Evil Lord, and warns that there is still an enemy on the loose. The academy where Ludi studies may be in danger, and rumors say there is a spy infiltrated. Kosuke realizes he changed the original game story's course, which makes him uncertain about what will come. Marino states that his family has always been watched by this church, putting him directly in the crosshairs. Claris states that, having saved Princess Ludi, Kosuke will be seen as an obstacle by the enemies and will be in danger. She makes clear that, in an emergency, her main duty is to protect Ludi, but she also wants to protect Kosuke. Marino acknowledges the situation has become more complicated and points out that if Claris has to split her strength, she can't guarantee both will be safe. Ludi listens carefully and seems to reflect on the seriousness of the scenario. Marino surprises everyone by inviting Ludi to live with them. Ludi is shocked and unsure how to react. Kosuke panics at the idea, while Claris gets excited about the possibility. Marino keeps a confident smile, making it clear she will check the idea with Kosuke's father. Kosuke panics at the idea of living under the same roof as Ludi, but Marino assures it will be the best way to protect both. She says she will be present along with Hatsumi, which calms Claris. Claris and Marino reveal they already know each other, which surprises Kosuke. Claris comments she owes Hatsumi her basic understanding of magic. Ludi informs that she spoke with her father, and he was honored to accept the offered help. Marino celebrates the news enthusiastically. Everyone agrees that Ludi and Claris will join the group a few days before classes start. Kosuke thinks that, in the game, Ludi appeared later because of this same event, but now, with everything happening differently, they will be able to start together at school. Kosuke is excited to be living with Ludi and her maid, but Marino warns the three to get along, with no malice involved. While walking together, he realizes he doesn't know to what extent the changes in the world are caused by his actions. Several important characters and heroines are appearing earlier than expected, along with plots and events he never saw in the game, which makes him think, wait a minute. Kosuke sees the image of a new girl wielding a sword firmly with a determined look. He thinks to himself that, hopefully, he might get to know the other heroines too. The appearance of this new character makes it clear that the world around him continues expanding beyond what he knew from the game. The narrator explains that eroge is an expensive hobby, with games costing from $100 to $200. Players worry about money and social relationships, while the protagonists of these games generally wonder how to get close to the girls. After solving the money problem, the difficulty becomes choosing which heroine to follow. Even without having played the game, one must decide which seems most interesting, taking into account even the exclusive bonuses of each store. The character liked in the demo may end up being very different in the full game, and this can cause disappointment. Sometimes a route leaves such a strong mark that it prevents the player from following the others. Even so, these games are the most memorable. In general, characters have complicated pasts and unique abilities, like Kosuke Takioto, who is one of those special cases. Kosuke tries to adapt to the new living situation, but the atmosphere between him and Hatsumi is tense. Even though he finds her incredibly beautiful, he can't understand what goes on in her mind. Hatsumi, who is an instructor at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy, remains silent while Kosuke tries to break the ice by introducing himself energetically. Kosuke tries to start a conversation, but Hatsumi remains completely silent, making the atmosphere unbearably tense. He realizes his energetic way doesn't match her personality at all, comparing the two to oil and water. The situation is so uncomfortable that he understands why in the game the character preferred living in the dorms. Even trying to lighten the mood with jokes, nothing works. The silence only increases the pressure in the air. Marino prepares a special dinner to welcome the new living arrangement in the house. Kosuke is enchanted by the food, visibly emotional. She tells everyone to eat as much as they want since there's plenty. The atmosphere changes completely, and the environment finally fills with warmth and joy from her gesture. Kusuke enthusiastically praises the food, saying it's the best he's ever tasted. Marino gets shy and happy with the compliment, while Hatsumi eats silently but visibly satisfied. Kusuke is surprised to learn he's eating meat from a horned monster rabbit. Marino explains she chose ingredients he would probably like and also included Hatsumi's favorite dishes. Even shocked by the meat's origin, Kusuke recognizes he has been living very unusual experiences since arriving in this world. Kusuke thanks, relieved, after Marino explains she already told Hatsumi everything about his situation. Marino praises his effort, saying he is dedicated to training and studies. Kusuke asks Hatsumi to be kind to him, and she for the first time shows curiosity, asking directly why he is working so hard on magical training. Kusuke answers that he is dedicating himself fully to magic training because he wants to be prepared before classes start. Marino points out that the house they are in is perfect for that, with a library, enchantment laboratories, and even a nearby waterfall. While he gets excited about the idea, Marino receives an urgent call and needs to leave. Marino says goodbye and asks Hatsumi to show the house to Kusuke, telling her to act like a good older sister. Hatsumi is surprised by the request and thinks about it, while Kusuke panics at Marino's departure, calling her his lifeline. Even nervous, Hatsumi accepts the task, while Marino promises to return as soon as possible. Hatsumi calls Kusuke by his first name and surprises him by referring to herself as One-chan while guiding him through the house. He is confused by the sudden change in attitude, but relieved she is talking to him. Then she shows him his room, ending the small tour. Kusuke praises the house and gets excited about living together. Hatsumi shows her room and her mother's, which surprises him. She comments that Marino-san is very beautiful, even possibly mistaken for a student, but warns that she is much older than him. Then she asks if he likes older women, making the atmosphere slightly uncomfortable. During the conversation, Hatsumi asks if Kusuke is there trying to become her new father, which leaves him completely speechless. While thinking about it, he remembers that Hatsumi's father, that is, Marino-san's husband, was apparently murdered. Even so, he admits that Marino-san is totally his type, making it clear the situation feels like something from an ROJ game. Hatsumi decided to continue her father's unfinished research after his death. On the official developer's blog for the game, it was revealed they had created a complex backstory for her, but the project managers cut everything. Kusuke reflects on his weakness after the fight at the hotel. Even being just the best friend character in the game, he doesn't want to lose to the original protagonist, Iori. He realizes he needs an ability to improve his combat perception and considers learning clairvoyance or the mind's eye, which Tori would only learn much later in the original plot. After reflecting on his weakness in long-range combat, Kusuke decides he cannot waste his chance to improve. He remembers that the Hanamura house is the best place to learn magic and, excited, asks Hatsumi to borrow a book about spatial magic, something he has wanted to study for a long time. Hatsumi looks at Kusuke coldly and says no, refusing his request. She explains that he acts more stiffly with her than with her mother, and that bothers her. Even surprised, Kusuke hears her ask him not to be formal with her either. He tries to justify himself by saying he was only following Marimo's orders, but Hatsumi insists he should treat them both the same way. Hatsumi approaches Kosuke and asks him to be more affectionate and call her Oni-chan. Embarrassed, he hesitates, saying it's a little awkward, so he decides to call her Hatsumi-Nisan. Although not exactly what she wanted, she accepts as long as he keeps it up. Kusuke feels relieved and follows her to the library, still finding her personality quite unpredictable. Kusuke is impressed by the size of the house's library and enthusiastically praises it, saying a normal house would never have something so grand. Hatsumi explains that he can read any book there, which surprises him even more. He asks if there are no important research data there, but she just responds with an as if it's no big deal. Kusuke gets excited to know he can practice mana control while studying. He confirms with Hatsumi if the spatial magic books are there, and she says yes, but the really important ones are not in that space. Even so, he gets motivated and prepares to start studying, surprised by magical hands summoned to bring books to him, making him even more excited. Hatsumi hands Kosuke a book, recommending it for studying spatial magic. She says she will also be working in that area and offers to answer questions. Kusuke is surprised by her consideration, even though she seems difficult to understand. Curious, he asks about her experience at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy. Hatsumi reveals that although she didn't make friends at Tsukuyomi Academy, she recognizes it's an excellent place for those seeking knowledge and strength. She highlights that there were many incredible people there. The academy offers more classes the higher the student's level, allowing learning of high-level attack spells and other advanced magic types. Kusuke shows interest in advanced classes, but admits his body doesn't handle magic well. Hatsumi offers to teach him, saying she's good at it, but he believes that even with help, he wouldn't be able to use it well. In the end, he concludes that focusing on physical training and dungeon exploration seems a better use of his time. Kusuke reflects that even before classes start, he's already practicing exactly what will be taught: physical preparation, mana strengthening, and ranged combat. To him, living with Hatsumi and Marimo is advantageous because he learns magic with a beautiful mother and daughter duo. Kusuke asks if he can visit the nearby waterfall. Hatsumi confirms that her mother gave permission to explore the area, so he leaves excited, saying he'll return at night. He also thinks that unlike the dorm in the game, here he can use the facilities without curfew, ideal for unlocking new areas. Kusuke runs excitedly toward the waterfall, remembering that in the game, a specific character took the protagonist there. Even not knowing if she'll be there, he can't contain his excitement. He recalls that this character was the one he trusted most in the game, the one he never removed from the team and used to defeat even the toughest bosses, the most important to him. Kusuke finally meets Yukina Mizumori at the waterfall. He's thrilled to see her there, as she was the heroine he most wanted to meet. Yukine, one of the big three in the MX game, appears tying her hair with a serious expression while Kusuke calls to her excitedly, completely impressed by her presence. Kusuke watches excitedly as Yukine trains alone with the sword in front of the waterfall. She shows precision and strength in her strikes, clearly proving her reputation as one of the big three is well-deserved. He can hardly believe he's seeing the legendary Yukine up close, in the flesh. Yukine performs a powerful technique in front of the waterfall, with an intense and precise aura. Each movement is fast and sharp, showing her complete mastery of the sword. Kusuke watches admiringly, impressed by the strength and elegance of the warrior he so admired in the game. Yukine sheaths her sword gracefully after finishing the cut under the waterfall, letting the water flow normally again. With a calm look, she turns silently. Kusuke watches impressed but hesitates to approach. Even excited, her presence's weight makes him nervous, and he runs back with his heart pounding. Kusuke is completely impressed by Yukine's speed. He cannot keep up with her movements with the naginata, and admits no scene in the game compares to what he saw live. Fascinated, he wonders how she can fight like that, and dreams of reaching that level someday. Kusuke starts thinking about how to face such speed. He considers acting before the enemy, or turning his scarf into a giant shield. Even without a definite solution, he knows he needs to find another way to deal with this challenge. Kusuke is excited by the idea of training his reflexes using his scarf to react to the enemy's speed. He also realizes that improving his vision and acquiring new skills may be essential. Inspired by Yukine, he declares determinedly that he wants to get stronger as soon as possible. Kusuke returns home excited after training and decides he will keep working hard in the coming days. Since he was all dirty, he decides to take a quick shower. Upon arriving home, he notices Marimo hasn't returned yet and wonders if Hatsumi is still busy with work. The next morning, Marimo enters Kusuke's room with a warm smile, wishing him good morning. In a gentle tone, she asks if he slept well, showing her usual concern and affection for him. Kusuke wakes up early and greets Marimo with an enthusiastic good morning. She praises his effort for getting up so early, unlike her daughter who is still sleeping and only wakes if someone calls her. Marimo assures breakfast will be ready when he returns, and Kusuke leaves motivated to run a bit before starting the day. Kusuke takes advantage of the privacy moment to train intensely. He practices movements with full focus, excited not to have anyone watching. Confident, he hopes constant effort will lead to acquiring new skills. Kusuke unlocks the special skill Mind's Eye, considered extremely powerful in the game. It increases dodge chance, critical rate, and perception of enemy movements. For him, it's a perfect tool to fix his visual limitation when using his fabric wall, besides being essential in advanced combat. Kusuke is startled when surprised by Yukine Mizumori, who calmly introduces herself. She reveals she is a student at Tsukuyomi Magic Academy and praises Kusuke's effort for training so early. Kusuke introduces himself enthusiastically to Yukine, revealing he will enter the academy that spring. He can hardly believe he is talking to her personally. Yukine notices his excitement, but keeps the conversation polite, saying he will be a year younger than her. Yukine had sensed Kusuke's presence even before seeing him, and asks if he is connected to the director. Kusuke, a bit embarrassed, says the director only showed him around. He apologizes if he is disturbing the place, but Yukine answers directly, confirming this is her running route, and his presence makes sense since he used the mind's eye skill. Kusuke asks if he is not disturbing and if he can continue using the place. Yukine responds with a smile, saying she is happy about that, and comments that seeing him train motivates her too. Then she says she is about to take a break and asks if he wants to chat a bit. Kusuke eagerly agrees. Kusuke explains he has trained every day to get as strong as possible before classes start. Yukine notices he put weights on his stole, and he reveals his special skill is to freely manipulate this item. Proudly, he demonstrates how he can shape it in various forms, including for attacks. Kusuke molds his stole into a sofa and invites Yukine to sit. She is impressed by his skill, finding it amazing he can still maintain the enchantment even after so much physical effort. Yukine admits that in his place she would have run out of mana long ago. Kusuke comments he is honored to receive praise from the vice president of the morality committee and explains everyone admires the school's 3 main committees. Yukine is surprised he knows this, but says his reputation precedes him. Despite the praise, she responds humbly, saying there are still higher levels to reach. Yukine asks if Takioto is good with another type of magic, and he admits he is terrible with emission magics. Yukine demonstrates her affinity with water magic, but produces only a small stream of water. She explains she has a special magical constitution. They both laugh at the situation, showing they are understanding each other better. Takioto apologizes for not being more attentive, but Yukine answers calmly, saying she is having a lot of fun. He then gets motivated, promising he will train hard and reach the top of the academy. Yukine watches silently, visibly moved by his determination. Yukine, impressed by Takioto's determination, says that with such willpower, even an important position in the 3 committees could be within his reach. Excited, he promises to do his best to achieve that. He understands that if he really wants to reach the top, he will have to join one of those elite groups formed by the school's most powerful students. Yukine prepares to return to training and invites Takioto to accompany her. He gets excited and says he would like to ask a favor. With determination, he bows and asks her to teach him how to use the mind's eye skill. Surprised, Yukine asks if he is really sure about that. Yukine takes Takioto to a waterfall as part of the training. They stand under the falling water, and he shivers from the cold while complaining about the temperature. Meanwhile, Yukine remains calm and focused, demonstrating discipline and concentration. Takioto starts trembling from the cold, desperate to leave and questioning the meaning of it all. Yukine firmly scolds him for being distracted, telling him to clear his mind and keep his mana active. She demands full focus on the training under the waterfall. Yukine explains that upon mastering the mind's eye skill, Takioto will be able to sense it even with his eyes closed. The skill allows detecting enemy mana movements, giving an advantage in combat. At higher levels, it would be possible even to see through objects and predict the future, but she hasn't reached that point yet. Takioto, shivering from the cold, compares the skill to a psychic development game, but complains that it doesn't help at all right now. Yukine instructs Takioto to sharpen his senses and feel mana with the 7th sense. He tries to obey, but complains that just feeling his own mana is already hard, and that in his world there was nothing like that. Yukine insists that the 7th sense is an organ that detects mana. Cold and exhausted, Takioto says he will try, and she tells him to stop complaining and focus. Takioto trembles from the cold and becomes desperate, realizing he endured an hour under the waterfall with no results. Yukine then explains he is mistaken, as you don't learn a skill overnight. Still, she believes he can master the mind's eye, saying the important thing is to keep believing and practicing. Yukine commits to training with Takioto until he masters the mind's eye. She says there is still time before classes start and encourages him to be patient. She also reveals this training is part of her own progress, as she wants to reach the same level as her father, who could feel monsters' weak points just by touch. Takioto gets excited to know that the mind's eye allows detecting weak points and says he also wants to reach that level. Yukine smiles and confidently confirms. He remembers that in the game, this skill took 3 turns to learn, and believes that with Yukine's help, he should get it in a few days. When they say goodbye, he thanks her for the support, and she replies simply, "You did it." Takioto notices his cloak is very dirty, and complains about not having a spare. Regretting not buying more, he laments as he puts the cloak in the laundry. Then he takes a shower and comments that only erotic game protagonists and hopeless idiots would spy on someone in the bath. Next, he approaches a door, knocks, and asks if someone is inside. Kusuke arrives in the kitchen and praises the breakfast. The woman, still busy, asks him to wake Hatsumi. He agrees and goes upstairs, knocks on her door and calls, but there's no answer. He hesitates for a moment but decides to enter anyway, saying it doesn't matter. Kusuke enters the room calling for Hatsumi, warning that he will come in. Seeing she is sleeping deeply, he realizes she hasn't woken up yet. Kusuke is surprised to see Hatsumi sleeping in revealing clothes, trying to resist temptation. He approaches and tries to wake her gently, saying breakfast is ready. Kusuke tries to cover Hatsumi with the sheet, embarrassed by the situation. As he approaches, he ends up tripping and getting stuck beside her on the bed. Still asleep, she unconsciously hugs him, leaving him completely speechless, panicked, and not knowing how to get out of that embarrassing situation. Not wanting to wake her, he tries to leave carefully, but the situation remains awkward. Looking closely at her face, he thinks how beautiful she is, which makes him even more nervous. The older sister goes upstairs worried about Kosuke and Hatsumi's delay. Upon entering the room, she finds an unexpected and misunderstood scene, making both panic. Kosuke desperately tries to explain, while she reacts embarrassed and scared. The older sister enters the room and misunderstands everything, thinking Kusuke and Hatsumi are romantically involved. She celebrates exaggeratedly, while Kusuke tries to explain desperately. Hatsumi remains deeply asleep, dreaming about her mother's food. Then the scene cuts to the house with a calm atmosphere after breakfast. After breakfast, the older sister asks if Kusuke is free. When he confirms, she asks for help with shopping. Kusuke agrees excitedly, but when he receives the list, he gets confused by something he sees on it. Kusuke finds the list excessive for just 3 people, even being a teenager with a big appetite. Then his sister reveals the reason. Ludi will be moving into their house and there will be a welcome party that night. Kusuke is surprised, while Yukine watches silently. While resting after shopping, Kusuke confirms surprised that Ludi really will move in. His sister thanks him for the help and warns the welcome party will be at night. She also decides to take advantage and make it Kusuke's welcome party too. Yukine takes notes attentively, and the sister comments that Claris, a martial arts master and great teacher, can help Kusuke a lot. He hopes it won't get awkward between them. Kusuke comments that besides Yukine's advice, he would like to hear more opinions about how to learn skills. Upon learning he met Yukine, his sister gets excited and suggests inviting her to the party. Kusuke explains she will help him train for a while. The sister already gets enthusiastic, saying she will put even more effort into the food, since Ludi and Claris are used to delicious dishes. Hatsumi says she also wants to do something to make Kosuke happy. Marimo immediately takes over the kitchen and asks Hatsumi to take care of the decorations. Then she calls Kosuke and whispers in his ear, asking him to keep an eye on Hatsumi all the time, without explaining why. During the car ride, the maid shows concern about Ludi living in the same house as a man, even with Hatsumi and Marino present. But Ludi reassures her, saying he's not a bad person, and reminds her he risked his life to save them. Ludi jokes that Claris worries too much. Shortly after, she sees large floating buildings through the window and comments that they are almost at their destination. They engage in combat with fast and precise strikes. The woman dominates the fight, attacking with agility and controlling the space around her. The man tries to react, but she remains steady and confident, advancing with accurate attacks that knock down her opponents. Takeyoto dodges a quick attack and receives a compliment. Another character comments that the strike hit the woman's chest, causing a surprised reaction from her. The tension rises between the fighters, who continue facing each other intensely. The woman wins the fight with a precise kick and stays confident. She offers water to Takeyoto, who is tired on the ground, while the other character complains about losing again. She says that those with a strong goal are more resilient. Takeyoto thanks her and hopes to improve soon. She says she wants to get stronger and won't let him get ahead of her. He replies that he won't give up either. He thinks she is already facing the same problems as in the main story and wants to trigger her awakening event, no matter the cost. They talk about how time passes quickly. He mentions hearing that the Clover Princess will move to the Hanamura house today, and that he needs to help there. She replies that she will attend the welcome party at night. They say goodbye, and the scene shows the activity at the Hanamura house. They arrive at the house and are impressed by the elegance of the elves, who are very beautiful and stylish. Kusuke meets Marino, who informs him that Ludi-chan and Claris-chan will arrive soon. Kusuke confirms he understands. Ludivine Marie-Ange de la Trèfle arrives, the second princess of the Trèfle Empire. She greets everyone elegantly and is warmly welcomed by Marino and Kusuke. Ludivine returns the shawl to Kusuke and thanks him again. She asks him to call her Ludi and says they will be classmates. Kusuke accepts the request, relieved, and she says she's looking forward to it. Claris happily reunites with Hatsumi, saying it has been a long time since they last saw each other. Hatsumi is glad to see her well. Ludovine tells Kosuke that Hatsumi was the one who taught Claris how to use magic, and he reacts surprised. Claris explains she had double the mana of a normal person, but was terrible at using it. Thanks to Hatsumi, she can now control magic properly. Hatsumi praises her effort, while Claris gets emotional and says she always feels that the Hanamura family takes care of her. Kosuke notices this is similar to how he feels. The bodyguard thanks them for the prepared room and delivers the king's message, while being reassured not to worry. Ludovine is encouraged to feel at home and relax. Soon after, everyone decides to take a break for tea. The carriers announce they have finished their work and say goodbye, returning to the Empire. While everyone takes a tea break, Claris stays behind to organize the things they brought in the carriage. Kosuke finds this strange and offers to help since there is a lot to arrange. Claris accepts, surprised and happy with the gesture. Kosuke insists on helping Claris to get to know the house better too, but she gets nervous and tries to refuse. He picks up a box labeled "Handle with Care" and asks what's inside. Claris becomes extremely embarrassed to reveal it contains her underwear, saying she couldn't ask a man to deal with that. Kosuke is shocked to realize he was carrying Claris's underwear. She decides to take the box herself, embarrassed, while he assures her he won't look and tries to calm her down, saying it's all right. Claris apologizes for the embarrassment. Awkwardly, Kosuke thinks about what he's carrying, Claris's underwear, and starts sweating nervously. He points out the way to her room, and Claris, smiling and blushing, thanks him for being so considerate. Before going up, he asks her to be careful walking. Claris thinks she was worried about Ludovine living with a man, but feels calm because it's Kosuke. However, she gets shocked to notice something suspicious on his back, showing a surprised and nervous expression. Claris panics upon seeing her panties on Kosuke's head, screaming desperately and asking why that happened. Not understanding, he gets confused and tries to remove them, but Claris begs him not to touch. Claris becomes totally embarrassed and starts apologizing, saying she stained Kosuke's eyes with that awkward scene. Desperate, she even thinks about punishment for so much shame, but Kosuke tries to calm her down, asking her not to overdo it or bow like that. In the middle of the confusion, Kosuke and Claris stumble and fall on top of each other. Kosuke feels pain from the fall, while Claris gets embarrassed by the awkward situation, reminding him that this kind of accident keeps happening. Everything stays just awkward, without going further. Kosuke feels relieved for stopping Claris from overreacting, but she ends up fainting in the process. While he tries to clean up the mess, Ludovine arrives worried, having heard the noise. Kosuke panics, realizing the stairs are full of scattered underwear, and thinks no one can see that scene. Kosuke covers up by saying they only lost a step and that everything is fine now, trying to calm Ludovine. Claris, still confused, doesn't remember well what happened. Kosuke breathes relieved for managing to handle the situation, while Claris apologizes for worrying everyone. A new visitor arrives at the house, bringing a gift for the celebration and thanking for the invitation. Marino tells Kosuke that this must be Yukine, while everyone welcomes her happily, making the celebration atmosphere even livelier. Marino and Yukine greet everyone enthusiastically, saying how happy they are to have them there. Ludovine, Claris, and Kosuke thank them for the warm reception at the Hanamura house, smiling as the festive mood fills the place with joy. They arrive at the hall decorated for the welcome party. Yukine asks if she can help, but Marino tells her to just relax and enjoy. Claris introduces herself as Ludovine's maid, who cheerfully comments she will be a new student that year. Soon Marino announces that the food is ready, exciting everyone. Everyone is impressed to see the table full of dishes prepared by Marino. She invites the group to eat as much as they want, and Ludovine thanks her for the food, while everyone begins tasting the meal, praising how delicious everything looks. The guests are amazed tasting Marino's food, with surprised and happy expressions. Ludovine says it's even better than the chef's food in her kingdom, and Claris is impressed too. Marino feels very happy hearing the compliments, proud of her work. Claris praises Marino, saying that even though she's confident in her skills as a Trefla house servant, she has to admit she was outdone, especially by the incredible sauce of the dish. Marino is pleased and shows a special wine to accompany the meal, further charming the guests, who comment on the beautiful color of the drink. Marino serves the special wine, saying she saved it for an occasion like this, and assures there is juice for the younger ones. Claris is surprised to learn that Hatsumi, besides being good at magic, also cooks. Hatsumi, a bit shy, says she wanted to prepare something for the party as well. Kosuke mentions he's never tried Hatsumi's cooking, and Ludovine says she would love to taste it. Hatsumi is surprised and a little embarrassed, but quickly offers to help with whatever is needed, explaining that, although she is also a knight, she is still a servant and there to serve. Kosuke takes the opportunity to ask Claris if she has experience with swords, since she also teaches. He explains he wants to learn a technique, but thinks it will take a long time. Claris thinks for a moment, trying to remember a tip that might help. Claris explains that usually new skills appear when the desire for them reaches an extreme point, saying that was how it was for her too. Marino comments that this is even more relevant for Kusuke because of his special body. They end up comparing his situation awkwardly to that of a founding saint who also couldn't use long-range magic, which makes Ludovine find the similarity curious. Kusuke thinks he will have to be creative to become the strongest, using his abilities to his advantage. Claris explains that her fighting style changed completely after gaining certain skills. Before, she only used swords and bows, but after learning magic, she started fighting with a magic sword and shield spells. Kusuke admits he hasn't decided which weapon he wants as his main one yet. Claris explains that acquiring several skills opens many possibilities and will be very useful. She offers to give advice and even lessons, making Kusuke happy and relieved to have her and Yukin's support. Marino and Claris have fun drinking together, with Claris visibly embarrassed and happy. Kusuke tries to warn them they've had enough to drink, but Marino decides to open another bottle, exciting the group. To make the mood even more relaxed, she suggests a fun game for everyone to play and strengthen their bonds. Marino, already a bit tipsy from the wine, decides everyone will play the King's Game, excitedly raising the sticks. Kusuke gets nervous, realizing how altered she is, while Ludovine and Hatsumi, curious, ask what exactly this game is. Kusuke explains that the King's Game is a party game where everyone must obey the king's command, making Ludovine a little scared because it sounds more like a punishment. Marino becomes the first king and orders whoever draws number 1 to give her a shoulder massage, which relieves Ludovine since it's nothing embarrassing. Kusuke draws stick number 1 and ends up massaging Marino's shoulders, who is very pleased, saying he hit the right spot. He thinks the real winner was her. Soon Marino encourages the group for another round of the game, and Kusuke just wants to avoid becoming king next time. Kusuke draws the king's stick and gets nervous, remembering that the usual commands in the game are the most embarrassing. Pressured to make it exciting, he chooses a standard command, but regrets it as Ludovine, holding his stick, announces that number 3 will have to take off a piece of clothing, shocking everyone. Claris, completely drunk, stands up shouting she will take all her clothes off for Ludovine's sake, willing to do anything. Right after, she gets embarrassed, saying that, as a woman, she feels a bit reluctant, while Kusuke can only think she's totally out of her mind because of the alcohol. Marino offers Yukin to stay the night, but she decides to return home, thanking her for the offer. Kusuke offers to accompany her. Meanwhile, Ludovine and Claris comment on how fun the party was and start talking about cleaning up. At that moment, Hatsumi catches everyone's attention, interrupting their departure. Hatsumi appears, saying she finished cooking and wants everyone to try her dish before the party ends. The problem is that the food glows strangely, scaring the group. Kusuke, with a tense face, tries to politely refuse while wondering what that fluorescent thing might be. A large yacht cuts through the waters at night, passing under a lit bridge while fireworks explode in the sky, creating an impressive and festive scene. The image conveys a grand moment, like the peak of a luxurious celebration. Kusuke is shocked, trying to endure after tasting Hatsumi's strange dish. Marino yells for everyone to hold firm. In the end, the group celebrates that Ludovine managed to eat without problems. But Kusuke is so dizzy, he says he even saw the city lights and decides to lie down, drawing concerned and amused comments from the others. Claris trains Kusuke with sword and shield, surprising Marino and Kusuke himself, who praises her strength. Marino comments, impressed, on his talent despite it being his first time wielding a sword, and Claris smiles, saying he really has a knack for it. Kusuke gets excited thinking about exploring dungeons to get stronger, while Marino and Claris explain he will need to wait for classes to start to get permission. They emphasize that mastering the basics and gaining endurance is essential for growth, making Kusuke even more eager to begin. Kusuke nostalgically remembers expansions and special dungeons from the game he used to play, including April Fool's events and exclusive shop bonus dungeons, recognizing how some were difficult and even feeling sorry for the heroines involved. Kusuke recalls with frustration having to buy the same game 5 times because of an annoying system where each store sold only one exclusive edition. He even got digital and special versions straight from the developer, realizing no amount of money was enough to keep up with all those purchases. Kusuke remembers the nightmare of dealing with exclusive shop bonuses, which came in many forms: body pillows, tapestries, autographed cards, posters, postcards, special audios, and more. He even laughs alone, recalling the mistake of buying everything expecting a delay, only to see the items released normally, turning the stress into a strangely nostalgic memory. Kusuke excitedly says that after mastering mana strengthening, he wants to learn even more. Marimo, seeing his interest, approaches him and suggests something she has in mind: donation magic. She even brought a library book just for him, showing she thought of everything to help him advance his studies. Kusuke gets excited learning about the spell that allows transferring mana to another person, something like recovery and reinforcement magic. He decides he really wants to learn it to make good use of his large mana reserve. Soon after, he used the technique to supply his companions, thinking they can fight dungeon challenges without worries, while he acts like an MP battery for the group. Kusuke absorbs the new spell so fast he feels like it's going straight into his brain, surprising everyone with how quickly he's getting stronger. Meanwhile, Ludi also trains, trying to learn from Hatsumi how to shorten magical chants, showing the whole group is dedicated to evolving. Hatsumi explains that shortening chants is essential to cast stronger spells and praises Ludi, saying she's so talented she won't take long to get stronger. Ludi asked for the training to be very strict, which excited Hatsumi as a teacher. Kusuke, however, wonders if Ludi will hold up, knowing Hatsumi's training can be pretty harsh. Ludi is completely exhausted and panting, lying on the ground after the intense training. She starts crying quietly, thinking she never imagined Hatsumi's training would be so tough. Ludi is completely drained on the sofa, saying she can't even get up because her mana is almost completely drained. She asks Kusuke for help, who worries seeing her condition. While thinking what to do, he remembers the donation magic that can transfer mana. Ludi, visibly uncomfortable and sweating, says she would like to take a bath because she feels all sticky. Kusuke excitedly explains that using donation magic, Ludi's mana will recover, and he will also increase his magic level, meaning killing two birds with one stone. He admits he recently learned the spell. Ludi is surprised he knows that kind of magic. Then Kusuke recalls trying to use it on Claris, but isn't sure if it really worked, since Claris started trembling and acting strange, swearing she won't falter. Ludi says that since Marino and Hatsumi are busy and Claris is away, Kusuke is the only one she can trust at that moment. She agrees to help him practice the spell. Kusuke explains he needs to make direct skin contact to send mana, so he gets shy and asks where he can touch. Ludi, a bit shy, offers her hand, which relieves him, and he thanks her, considering it a safe option. Kusuke becomes completely nervous holding Ludi's hand, noticing how delicate, pale, with slightly pink fingertips and a little sweaty it is. Ludi is confused, thinking it's just a normal hand, but also starts blushing. The tension rises and their hearts race, creating a very awkward atmosphere between them. Kusuke feels embarrassed for praising Ludi's hand too much and apologizes, saying he got excited as if it were a game. Ludi, blushing, asks him to just start already because it's embarrassing to be watched like that. They joke that it would be a disaster if Claris caught them, so Kusuke decides to act fast and continues the spell, holding her hand firmly. Kusuke begins using the mana donation magic, focusing on feeling the rest of Ludi's mana. Upon locating it, he directs his own mana to her. He mentally explains that it's a simple process, but very hard to control, because if he sends too much, the mana disperses into the air. If too little, it might not work. Still, he continues the flow, determined to help Ludi recover. Kusuke asks how Ludi feels after the mana transfer, but she replies uncertainly. To try to help more, he decides to increase the flow. When he does, Ludi immediately reacts, taken by an intense wave of energy that runs through her body, causing a strong tremor and surprise. Ludi jumps startled after the strong mana shock, holding her chest, panting and confused. She questions if that is really safe, feeling something clearly wrong in how her body reacted while trying to understand what just happened. Kusuke nervously tries to explain, assuring he didn't do any of that on purpose. Ludi, still uneasy, decides to give him another chance. She lets him hold her hand once more, while Kosuke breathes deeply and promises to fully focus on controlling the mana flow correctly. Kusuke tries to continue the mana donation spell but becomes extremely nervous with their closeness and Ludi's reactions, who starts sweating and making embarrassed moans because of the magical heat. He thinks that, this way, nothing will work because his heart beats like a drum. Ludi also complains, embarrassed, saying it's getting too hot while Kusuke asks her not to make such suggestive sounds during the process. Kusuke cheers Ludi up, saying she already recovered enough to stand up and that she only needs a little more to be fully recovered. He tries to concentrate, confident it will work, and even comments he is close to leveling up as well. To reassure her, he promises to do his best to make the process as easy as possible for her. Kusuke begs to try the spell one more time, saying it will work now and promising it will be quick. Ludi understands his desire to get stronger and ends up agreeing, relaxing and saying he doesn't need to worry. Kusuke happily celebrates, thanking her for the chance.